This is Steve Ridgel, and as most of you know, I'm a preacher. I've been preaching a long time, sometimes self-supported, sometimes part-time, a lot of times full-time for churches. And every once in a while somebody says, hey, preaching, so is it like other careers? And there's a lot of things they may mean by that, but in some ways, of course, we get paid a salary a lot of times, and so it is a little bit like a business, which leads to this. Occasionally someone says, so do you ever have any things that are really awkward in the preaching business? And so I thought I'd just share with you a couple of things that were very awkward when they happened. The first one, a church, I was preaching a youth rally or some event where several churches were there, and some people came up afterward, told me where they went to church, and said, we're looking for a preacher. And I said, no, I'm happy what I'm doing, and that's fine. And they said, well, would you come preach one Sunday for us? And I said, well, sure, I'd be happy to help you while you are looking. So they called the next day and said, can you come set I think it was a week from the next Sunday. And I said, sure, I'll be there, that's fine. So I got up that Sunday, it was driving distance from my house. I drove to the church, I got out, and the gentleman walked out, stuck out his hand, introduced himself, and said, I'm the preacher here. And I said, oh. And he said, are you visiting, or what are you? And I said, well, this is pretty awkward. I was asked to come preach. And he said, I'm preaching today. And I said, you don't really know me, and I don't know you, but I think I need to tell you, they told me they were looking for a preacher. And he said, they haven't told me. What should I do? And I said, well, I'd go right in and find an elder and say, what's going on? And number two, if he says, yeah, we just hadn't told you, and yes, this guy that showed up is going to preach. If they tell you that, I wouldn't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out. And sure enough, he went in and found one, and they said, no, you're out. I watched him come out of the building, get in his car, and leave. So I changed my sermon a little bit, but I thought that was one of the most awkward things I have ever had happen. And then I had one very similar to that. I just finished doing some interim preaching, and a preacher at a large congregation where we live called and said, so now that I hear you finished at the town you were preaching in, so they found a preacher, so what are you doing next? And I said, well, I don't know yet. And he said, we need somebody to come help would you come teach our college class for a while? Well, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. And he said, okay. He said, if you'll come Sunday, we'll have somebody in there to introduce you. And he said, we've got a lot of college kids coming to worship, not many coming to class, and we think you'd help with that. Yeah, okay, I'll be glad to do that. So I show up, go into Bible class. There's 8 or 10 college kids, a couple of young adults there. I sit down, and everybody's staring at me. So one of the young adults kind of starts the class. And then he said, so you're Steve? And I said, yeah, Steve Ridgel. And he said, so what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm here to teach class. And he got the strangest look on his face, and he said, I'm the college class teacher. In fact, I'm the university minister. Now, I'm not really paid for that, but that's my job. And I said, well, I was asked if I'd come teach class. And he said, well, nobody told me. And I said, hey, I don't want to make issues. He said, no, that's fine. You can go ahead and teach. So I taught, and it was a little strained and awkward. And after class, he was very gracious. He said, listen, what's going on? And I said, all I can tell you is, I said, I'm going to tell you who called me. I'm going to tell you who invited me. And you need to go figure out what's going on, because I won't come back like this. And so a couple of days later, he let me know that he not only was not going to be doing the college class, they were leaving that congregation. And I kind of don't blame them. I mean, if nobody's going to tell you, they asked me if I'd go back in and teach, and we thought about it, and we did, and it turned out to be the start of a great 10 or 12 year run doing campus ministry. But I always thought, who asks somebody without making sure the person that you're going to replace knows they're not going to do it anymore? To the two most awkward things I've ever been involved in ministry. I've had lots of critical things and crisis things and emotional things, but in terms of just pure awkward, and made me kind of skittish about the whole thing, were the 2 times I showed up to teach or preach, and the person that had been doing it hadn't even been told. Don't do your business that way, churches.